My name is Savannah Monroe. And I learned to disappear before I ever truly existed. Growing up in the sunburned quiet of Austin, Texas, I was the kind of girl whose name the teachers always paused over. The kind that people passed in the hallways without seeing, like I was made of glass instead of skin and silence. After the accident took my parents, I moved into my grandmother's narrow old house with creaky floors and curtains that always seemed a little too drawn. Grief made me small. Smaller than I already was. I became background noise in my own life. People noticed me only when I spoke too softly or when my hand shot up too quickly in class. I was the quiet one, the tech girl, the brain. No one ever said brilliant, but I knew what I was. I had a mind that clicked with code and complexity. I found magic in logic, in making things work when everything else in my life felt broken beyond repair. I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to build. And that was enough. Until Tyler Brooks. He was the boy everyone noticed, tall, golden, loud in the way that said, I matter. He was a quarterback, the kind of guy who had his name chanted under the Friday night lights, who made teachers chuckle and girls lose their voices. And for some reason I never dared to understand, he chose me. Not all at once. It started with a shared class project in sophomore year. Then lunch together. Then whispered jokes and texts at midnight. He said I was different. He liked that I didn't chase the spotlight. I believed him. I wanted to believe someone saw me for more than the A's and the awkward smiles. I never questioned why he never held my hand in public. Why he only kissed me when we were alone. Why I wasn't invited to the same parties his friends posted about. Love, I thought, didn't need to be loud. Maybe I didn't either. But deep inside, there was always that flicker, that suspicion that I wasn't a girlfriend, I was a curiosity. A quiet side project. Something to fix or admire in secret, like an old car or a puzzle box. Still, I clung to the idea of us like it was a life raft. I told no one about the startup ideas scribbled in the back of my notebooks. I didn't tell him about the late nights I spent learning to build algorithms instead of dreaming of college dances. I kept my ambition like a secret diary, because I knew what the world did to girls like me when we dared to want more. I was 17, invisible to most, but not to him. And that made me believe I mattered. It was a dangerous kind of hope. Tyler had charm that wore down resistance like waves on a stone. When he called me his little genius, I laughed, even if it felt like a leash. He never asked what I wanted. He assumed I'd go to the state college nearby. Marry someone safe. Maybe teach. Nothing that would pull me too far from his orbit. And I smiled, nodded, kissed him, and kept building in the dark. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I shone too bright, I'd burn alone. I remember the night before prom. I was sitting on my bedroom floor, surrounded by tangled wires and code. I had just finished a prototype of a team management platform I'd been working on for weeks, a clean interface, with seamless delegation tools. No one knew. No one asked. Tyler had texted me earlier, something short and flippant, don't forget the dress code's black and gold LOL. I stared at the message for a full minute, then locked my phone. I told myself prom would be fine. That Tyler liked me. That I wasn't just some hidden chapter in his golden boy narrative. But deep down, I knew something was coming. Something I couldn't explain. A tremor under my skin that told me I was standing on the edge of a cliff and the ground behind me was already gone. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror, tight curls tamed, makeup minimal, black dress fitting just right. And I didn't recognize the girl staring back. She looked like she belonged in someone else's story. But I went anyway. I walked into that gymnasium, drenched in glitter and artificial starlight, and pretended I was the kind of girl who went to dances with boys like Tyler Brooks. I smiled when I was supposed to. I laughed when he whispered jokes I didn't find funny. I played the part. The invisible girl, finally seen. And yet, even then, something inside me whispered, this is not who you are. This is not your story. But I ignored it. I always had. Because sometimes, it's easier to live in someone else's light than to risk lighting your own flame. That was the last night I ever let anyone else write my story for me. The end didn't come gently. It came with a laugh. And the sound of my name being forgotten all over again. Prom night was supposed to be magic. That's what they said. But all I remember is the noise, music that throbbed in my chest, fake starlight from a rented ceiling, and the hum of people pretending their lives were perfect for one more evening. Tyler looked like he belonged there. Golden skin under golden lights. Laughing like the world bowed to him. He had his arm around my waist, casual, like I was just another part of his costume. His friends grinned at him, nodding approval. They didn't see me. Not really. I was just the shadow that trailed behind him, the accessory to his success story. Still, I smiled. Still, I stayed. We danced. Sort of. He moved like he had somewhere better to be. I moved like I had nowhere else to go. I told myself this was enough, his hand on my back, his breath in my ear, the illusion of closeness. Maybe that's all love was meant to be for someone like me. Quiet. Unseen. Tolerated. Then came the stage. The senior superlatives part of the night. Loud laughter. Inside jokes. Applause for the popular. I wasn't expecting anything. I was ready to disappear behind the camera flashes. But then Tyler grabbed my hand. Come on, he said, pulling me toward the front. Let's give them a show. And I followed. Of course I did. We climbed the steps to the makeshift stage. Everyone watching. Everyone waiting. He took the mic. I stood beside him, clutching my dress with trembling fingers. I just want to say, Tyler began, flashing his trademark smirk, this year wouldn't have been the same without Savannah. Some people clapped. Most didn't. She's brilliant, he added. Like, scary smart. Built her own robot just to avoid talking to people. Laughter. Not with me, at me. And honestly, he went on, voice smooth and cruel, I think it's time she spread her wings. Go save the world, Savannah. You're not really built for parties anyway. More laughter. And then the line that would echo for years. She'll never be anything but a boring little nerd. He looked at me, smiling. Like it was all just a joke. Like I was supposed to laugh, too. But I didn't. I stepped away from him. Walked up that stage with my head high and my heart in pieces. The crowd watched. Some confused. Some amused. None of them mattered. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I waited until I was behind the gym, where the music was muffled and no one followed. I sat on a cold concrete bench and stared at the night sky, wondering how a heart could break so quietly and still hurt this loud. Tyler didn't come after me. No one did. And I realized then what I had been to him, not a girlfriend, not a partner, not even a person. I was a punchline. But something else happened out there in the dark. The shame burned. But under it, something sparked. Something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Anger. Not the kind that lashes out. The kind that builds things. The kind that reshapes lives. I had spent so long shrinking, trying not to take up space. Hiding my brilliance so I wouldn't scare people like Tyler. Pretending I was okay with being someone's secret, someone's charity case. But not anymore. That night, everything broke. The illusions. The fear. The need to be seen by anyone but myself. And in that shattered silence, I made a quiet promise, I will never let someone like him define me again. The Monday after prom, I deleted everything. Photos. Messages. My entire social media presence, gone with a few clicks. Years of digital proof that I had ever existed in someone else's world, erased like chalk from a board. I didn't post a farewell, didn't make a statement. I simply vanished. And no one asked why. Not Tyler. Not his friends. Not the girls who once whispered behind my back, then laughed in my face. I became what I had always been, invisible. Only this time, I chose it. I stopped answering texts. Stopped opening emails from the college counselors. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched, full scholarships plus tech plus New York. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew it wasn't here. A week later, I found it. A small innovation fund run by a nonprofit in Brooklyn. They were offering a rare opportunity, full tuition, housing, and a stipend for underrepresented young tech developers. I wrote the application in a single sitting. No edits. No second guessing. I hit submit and went to bed. 3 weeks passed. Then came the email, "Congratulations, Savannah Monroe. You've been selected." That was the day I told my grandmother. She sat across from me at our chipped kitchen table, staring over her glasses. Her eyes softened as I explained. She didn't ask why I wanted to leave. She knew. She'd watched me fade for years. She just nodded and said, "Don't forget who you are." But the truth was, I didn't know yet. I packed what little I had into 2 bags. A laptop. Some clothes. My prototypes. A notebook filled with half-formed ideas. No memories, no mementos. No pictures of Tyler. Not a trace of who I had been. Austin became a backdrop in the rearview mirror of a Greyhound bus. New York didn't welcome me, it swallowed me. Concrete, noise, ambition. Everything moved fast, and I had to run just to keep from falling behind. But I didn't break. I adapted. I learned to navigate subway maps and pitch meetings. I learned to speak louder, walk quicker, listen sharper. The program was grueling. Long nights. Tight deadlines. No one cared about prom queens or high school heartbreaks. Everyone there was hungry. Everyone had something to prove. I was no longer the smartest person in the room, and that thrilled me. Because it meant I had room to grow. I stopped waiting for permission. I built. I coded until my eyes burned. I tested until my fingers ached. I turned mistakes into fuel. I took internships no one else wanted. Did work no one else saw. And with each project, each late night, each quiet win, I felt something inside me shift. For the first time, I wasn't surviving someone else's world. I was creating my own. No one from home reached out. No one checked in. And I didn't need them to. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't Tyler's little nerd. I was Savannah Monroe. And I had work to do. New York was never soft. It didn't care where I came from or what I had survived. It was a city of noise and neon, of people with sharper elbows and louder voices, of ambition that burned like streetlight fire. I arrived thinking hard work would be enough. That intelligence and effort would carry me through. They didn't. Not at first. I applied for my first freelance project 2 months into the program, a simple system for task delegation in a startup's beta launch. They ghosted me after the first meeting. The founder, a man 10 years older than me, had smiled too much during the pitch and never once asked about my qualifications. I waited 2 weeks before realizing they'd hired someone else. The second rejection was worse. A woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and efficient, said, "You're brilliant, but too green. You'll burn out." Then she patted my shoulder and moved on to the next name on the list. It became a pattern. They liked my ideas. Loved my concepts. But there was always a reason to say no. Too young. Too new. Too much Texas in my voice. I started staying with a girl I met in the program, Nia, a fast-talking Brooklyn native with a sharp sense of humor and a mattress on the floor of a walk-up apartment. We shared instant noodles, bad coffee, and dreams way too big for the space we lived in. I slept on her couch for 5 months. I almost went home once. It was after a meeting with a potential investor. I had pitched my prototype, a small, elegant system for remote team collaboration, and his eyes lit up. He called it disruptive. He said we'd be in touch. I let myself believe, just for a moment. Then he pulled out. No explanation. No callback. Just silence. I found out later through a mutual contact that he had chosen to back the son of an old friend instead. Same concept, less innovation. More connections. I didn't get out of bed the next day. I didn't speak to Nia. I stared at the ceiling and thought, maybe Tyler was right. Maybe I would never be anything more than that quiet, forgettable girl in the corner. But that thought didn't last long. Because I remembered what it felt like to stand on that prom stage, heart shattered but spine straight. I remembered deleting my past, walking into the unknown alone, building something from nothing. I remembered what it cost to get here. And I wasn't about to waste it. So I got up. I rewrote the code. I found another meeting. I pitched again. Every door that closed forced me to find a window, or build one myself. I learned to speak the language of investors. I learned how to hold a room. I started dressing sharper, talking slower, taking up space. Each no was a bruise. But bruises fade. And I wasn't afraid of pain anymore. I was afraid of staying small. And that fear, that fire, kept me moving. 3 years. That's how long it took. 3 years of pitching to empty rooms. Of hearing maybe later more times than I could count. Of cold coffee, late nights, and prototypes that no one wanted until one day, they did. It started with a glitch. I was fixing a bug in a scheduling module when I realized something: none of the tools out there truly supported small teams trying to scale. They were bloated, overcomplicated, or too rigid. I'd been trying to fit into their systems, but what if I built something that fit us? So I stripped everything down. Started from zero. The result was a lean, intuitive app that made managing remote teams seamless. Smart auto-delegation. Real-time accountability. A dashboard that didn't overwhelm. I called it Pulse. Nia helped me test it with her freelance clients. Then a few others joined. Word spread. Startups began messaging me, asking if they could try it. Within 2 months, the user base doubled, then tripled. I wasn't ready for it. I still didn't have office space. Still worked from borrowed couches and co-working corners. I ran the whole backend myself, fixed every bug, answered every email. And then, late one night, a message landed in my inbox. Short. Direct. Been watching Pulse grow. Impressive traction. Let's talk. No name. Just an encrypted email address and a calendar link. I hesitated. It felt like bait. But I clicked anyway. The meeting was set for 7 o'clock the next morning. I didn't sleep. Just paced the apartment while the city outside snored and blinked. When the call started, the screen showed nothing but a voice icon and the initials RT. Whoever he was spoke with the calm authority of someone used to people listening. He asked about the app. About the architecture. About my plans for scaling. I answered everything without hesitation. Then he said, "I'll fund you. Full backing. No strings. But I want one condition: stay anonymous for now. You'll understand later." It didn't make sense. But he wired the money the next day. $50,000. Enough to launch version 2. Enough to breathe. I wanted to be excited. But all I felt was panic. For so long, I'd lived on the edge of collapse. Now that something was finally working, I didn't know how to stand still. So I worked harder. I brought in 2 developers. Designed a branding package. Created onboarding videos. I turned Pulse into more than a project, it became a company. And I still told no one about Tyler. No one knew about the stage. The mic. The laugh. No one knew that I carried the memory of that moment like a shard in my chest, not because it still hurt, but because it still mattered. Because I had built every line of code, every success, with that voice in my head saying I wouldn't make it. I was proving him wrong in silence. Not for him. For me. Because the most powerful revenge is not anger. It's becoming everything they said you never would. Success didn't happen overnight. It never does. It took 5 years of relentless discipline, of turning every rejection into a case study, every mistake into a lesson. Pulse grew because I never stopped pushing. I refused to plateau. I stayed paranoid, hungry, and invisible in all the right ways. By the time I turned 26, Pulse had offices in 3 cities, over 60 employees, and a client base that included Fortune 500 companies. We didn't advertise. We didn't beg for headlines. People came to us. Our systems worked, and word spread like wildfire through the startup circuit. I stayed in Austin. It wasn't home, not really, but it was where I had been broken. And now, it was mine to conquer. I kept the team lean, sharp, and loyal. No one made it through the hiring process without my approval, especially at the senior level. Every resume crossed my desk. I read them carefully. Studied patterns. Watched for ambition disguised as noise. I thought I had seen every type of applicant. Until I saw his name. Tyler Brooks. It was late afternoon. The office was quiet, the sun hitting the glass walls just right. I flipped through the file and there it was, his name, printed in confident bold font, with a clean photo at the top. His face had changed. The boyish charm was dulled, jaw tighter, hair shorter, smile missing. The resume was solid. Impressive even. For years at a mid-sized SaaS company, experience with back-end architecture, 2 small side projects, 1 failed startup. A recommendation from someone I vaguely respected. I didn't breathe for a full minute. Then I laughed. Not loud. Not bitter. Just surprised. The universe was many things. Subtle wasn't one of them. I could have deleted it right then. No one would question me. My authority was unquestioned. I could have let him vanish again, quietly, like so many others. But I didn't. I forwarded the file to my assistant with a single note, bring him in. I want to handle this one personally. She confirmed the appointment within the hour. The interview was scheduled for Friday, 11 o'clock in the morning. The days leading up to it passed in a blur of code reviews, board meetings, client calls. But underneath it all, that folder sat in the corner of my mind, humming like a server just before overload. I didn't tell anyone. Not Nia. Not my CTO. Not even the HR director, who asked, "Do you know this guy?" when I insisted on being present. Just a hunch, I said, and smiled. The morning of the interview, I arrived early. Wore my sharpest black suit. Tied my curls back in a low, precise knot. No makeup. No accessories. Just presence. Clean. Sharp. Final. I stood by the window as the minutes ticked down. I didn't rehearse. I didn't prepare questions. This wasn't about performance. It was about recognition. And when 11 o'clock struck, I sat at the head of the long conference table, spine straight, heart steady. The door opened. And he walked in. He stepped through the door like he had no idea. Like I was just another executive in another meeting. His stride was confident, easy, as if the years hadn't changed anything, as if we were still 17, as if the last time he looked at me wasn't from a stage under a gymnasium spotlight with laughter in his throat and poison in his smile. But when he saw me, really saw me, he froze. It was brief, but I caught it. The way his shoulders locked. The flicker of disbelief. The half-second delay in his breath. Recognition landed like a slap. He didn't expect me. Good. I didn't stand. Didn't smile. I just watched him cross the room. Savannah? He asked, like a question, like he couldn't believe what his eyes were telling him. Yes, I said. My voice was calm, deliberate. Take a seat. He moved slowly, like his body remembered things his mouth didn't want to admit. He sat across from me at the long table. The badge clipped to his chest read visitor in bold capital letters. I made sure of that. He glanced around, trying to read the room, trying to read me. I gave him nothing. I didn't know, he began, then trailed off. You didn't know I was the CEO, I finished for him. He nodded once. Awkward. Tense. Still trying to find his footing. You have 5 minutes, I said. Make your case. I watched him swallow whatever clever line he had prepared. He shifted in his chair. Cleared his throat. Started talking. He gave the standard pitch, years of experience, solid grasp of frameworks, passion for innovation, eager to learn. His voice trembled at first, but then settled into old rhythms. He even smiled once, trying to disarm me. But I wasn't the girl he remembered. I was steel now. Professional. Poised. Silent. I didn't interrupt. Didn't give away a single thought. I just let him talk himself in circles, selling himself to a woman he once publicly shadowed for sport. When he finished, I leaned forward slightly. You've changed your resume, I said. Back in school, you told everyone you'd never need tech. Said it was for losers with no social life. He blinked. The memory was sharp, it hit him. He didn't deny it. People grow, he said. Some, I replied. Others just pivot. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Unflinching. And then I asked the question I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. Do you remember what you said to me at prom? His lips parted. He hesitated. I didn't blink. He tried to laugh it off at first. A shrug, a nervous chuckle. It was high school. We all said stupid things. No, I said, leaning in. You didn't just say something stupid. You humiliated me. You ended our relationship like a joke. In front of the entire senior class. You told me I would never be more than a boring little nerd. His face fell. Completely. There it was. The truth, landing like a blow. I remember, he said softly. I waited. He looked down. Exhaled slowly. I was a coward, he admitted. You were smarter than me, and I hated that. I wanted to be the big deal. The one everyone noticed. But you were the one with real talent. And I couldn't handle it. I said nothing. I watched him stew in it. There was no satisfaction in his shame. I wasn't here for revenge. I wasn't here for closure. I was here to decide. And I had already made up my mind. The position you applied for, I said slowly, has already been filled. He looked up, startled. Hurt, maybe. But he didn't speak. He nodded once. I stood. Walked to the door. Held it open. He moved to leave. Then I said it. Wait. Wait. That one word stopped him cold. His hand was already on the doorknob. He turned halfway, confusion flickering across his face. I stayed where I was, composed, my posture measured. I wasn't finished yet. I wanted him to hear it, not just with his ears, but in his bones. There's another opening, I said. Junior level. Entry point salary. No team leadership, no perks, no fast track to management. He frowned, trying to make sense of it. You're offering me a different job? I'm offering you a chance, I said. He blinked. Why? I walked back to the table, sat down, and looked him in the eye. Because I want to see what you'll do when no one hands you anything. He stood there in silence for a long time. I could feel his pride struggling with his past. The version of himself that once lived at the top of a high school food chain was dying a slow, awkward death in front of me. And I wasn't going to save him. I didn't come here expecting a handout, he finally said. You didn't come expecting me at all. He nodded once, slowly. You're right. I handed him a new badge from the folder beside me. This one read probationary, 6 months. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. You start Monday. 8 o'clock sharp. Training begins at the bottom. He took the badge without speaking, then looked down at it like it was heavier than it should have been. It probably was. I gestured to the door. He walked out. And I sat in that room for a long time after he was gone, staring at the space he had occupied. This wasn't about revenge. It never was. It wasn't about proving a point or balancing some cosmic scale. It was about control. I had once been the girl at his mercy, the one whose worth was decided by his approval, and later, his ridicule. Now I was the woman who decided whether he would get a second chance. And I gave it to him. Not because I owed him anything. Because I owed myself the clarity to know I didn't need to destroy him to rise. The office was quiet for the rest of the day. I didn't mention the meeting to anyone. HR sent the usual onboarding documents. IT set up a generic workstation. To the rest of the team, he would just be another new hire. To me, he was a memory reintroduced, not with drama, but with discipline. That night, I walked home through the quiet Austin streets. The city didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like something I had bent to my will. I passed by the old high school, just for a second. The lights were off. The bleachers empty. The same gymnasium where he had ended me stood quietly in the dark. But it wasn't mine anymore. I had built something far greater. And now, Tyler Brooks would learn what it meant to earn every inch of space he stood on. Monday morning arrived with the quiet weight of expectation. At 7:45, Tyler stood at the reception desk holding a to-go coffee and trying too hard not to look nervous. He wore a navy button-down, clean jeans, and shoes that still looked brand new, the kind you buy for interviews, not work. I watched him from the mezzanine above the lobby. He didn't see me. My assistant handed him the new hire packet. HR escorted him to his desk, a small cubicle on the lower floor, near the interns. No window. No privacy. Just a keyboard, a screen, and the same startup handbook every new employee received. He accepted it all without complaint. That was the first surprise. He didn't try to speak to me that week. He showed up early. Logged every hour. Took notes during training. Asked smart questions, but never too loud, never too often. There was a restraint in him now that hadn't existed before. But I didn't forget. I didn't soften. I was professional and distant. The rest of the team didn't know. They treated him like anyone else. He kept his head down and never mentioned me. Not once. It was as if we were strangers, as if those years of history had vanished from his memory. But they hadn't vanished from mine. 2 weeks in, I scheduled a check-in. It wasn't protocol for someone in my position. But I needed to know. He entered the meeting room right on time. Closed the door gently. Sat across from me without speaking first. I opened my laptop. You've been consistent, I said. You're learning fast. He nodded. Thank you. Silence stretched between us. It pulsed with all the things we weren't saying. I could feel him working up the courage to speak. Then he did. I'm not expecting anything special, he said, voice low. I know I'm here because of a choice you didn't have to make. I just want to do the job. I didn't respond right away. I watched him, really watched him. The posture was different. The confidence had been peeled back. There was a kind of humility now. Earned or forced, I couldn't tell. You've said that before, I replied. He blinked. When? You said you respected me. That you liked how smart I was. That I was different. And then you humiliated me to get a laugh. He exhaled. Closed his eyes for a second. I can't undo that. No, I said. You can't. He shifted forward slightly. But I can be better now. I tilted my head, skeptical. Because you feel guilty? No, he said. Because I feel ashamed. There it was, the raw honesty. Not curated. Not polished. Just real. I didn't come here to make peace, I said. I didn't offer you this job so we could tie a neat bow on the past. I wanted to see what you'd do when no one handed you power. He nodded. I understand. I leaned back, folding my arms. You don't get to rewrite what happened. That night shaped who I became. And I'm still carrying the version of me that you tried to destroy. He didn't flinch. You didn't need me to destroy you. You rebuilt yourself into something stronger than I ever deserved to be part of. That silenced me. Because I had waited years for him to admit it, not just that he hurt me, but why? He looked down at the table, then up again. I was afraid, he said. That night, at prom, I saw how far you could go, and I knew I wouldn't keep up. So I chose the easy thing. The loud thing. I tried to shrink you so I could feel bigger. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, the wound pulsed, not with pain, but with recognition. I don't need your apology, I said finally. He nodded. I know. I stood, signaling the meeting was over. He followed. At the door, he paused. Thank you for letting me in the room. I met his gaze. Just remember, you're still at the bottom of the ladder. I wouldn't expect anything else. He walked out. And I sat alone with a strange quiet in my chest, not anger, not victory. Just a release. Maybe healing didn't come in grand gestures. Maybe it came in showing up, in sitting across from your past and refusing to break. The weeks that followed were uneventful. On the surface. Tyler did his work. Quiet, focused, unremarkable. He didn't ask for favors. He didn't linger in the halls. He submitted his reports on time, showed up to every stand-up, offered input when asked and kept his head down when not. To most of the team, he was just another new hire, smart, adaptable, slightly too formal. To me, he was a question that kept changing its shape. I told myself to keep my distance. I did not supervise him directly. That was intentional. I created space, physical, emotional, professional. And yet, I watched. From afar. I read his code. I reviewed the feedback from his team leads. I noted how he responded to setbacks. He didn't flinch under pressure. He didn't blame others when things went wrong. And, most surprisingly, he didn't try to impress me. That was what started to shake me. Because I expected guilt. I expected some subtle attempt at redemption. But he didn't seek absolution. He just worked. Quietly, steadily, like someone who understood exactly where he stood and what it would take to climb. One afternoon, I overheard him explaining a solution to a junior dev clear. Patient. He didn't take over. He didn't condescend. He guided. I walked away before he noticed me listening. And still, I didn't forget. I couldn't. The scar he left wasn't visible, but it had shaped everything, the way I built my walls, the speed with which I moved, the silence I carried through boardrooms and battlefields. Every system I created was born from that night. Every layer of defense. Every threshold of control. And yet, something was shifting. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Not in the way I used to be. Not in that primal, humiliating way. That fear had long since burned off and calcified into strategy. But what was surfacing now was different. Unexpected. Unwelcome. I was starting to wonder if he had changed. And I hated that part of me that cared. So I tested him. During a team sprint review, I challenged one of his proposals. Not because it was wrong, it wasn't, but because I wanted to see his reaction. Would he crumble? Would he posture? Would he retreat into old habits? He didn't. He calmly revised the slide, thanked me for the feedback, and returned 2 days later with an even better version of the feature. He didn't gloat. He didn't sulk. He just delivered. It was infuriating. And also, illuminating. One evening, alone in my office, I pulled up his personnel file. I reread the resume. The list of jobs. The dates, the locations. The things he hadn't said in that interview weeks ago. There was a gap in the timeline, 8 months unaccounted for. I hadn't noticed before. I stared at it. Then closed the file. Some wounds didn't need reopening. Some shifts didn't need full understanding. Because here was the truth, I was no longer carrying him with me every day. His name didn't taste bitter anymore. His presence didn't echo with old laughter. The power he once had over me, it was fading. Not because he had changed. But because I had. For the first time since that night on the stage, I felt something strange bloom in my chest. Not triumph. Not vengeance. Relief. Not everything broken needs to be fixed. Some things just need to be seen clearly and left behind. By the start of his 3rd month, Tyler had settled into a rhythm, not just with the code, but with the culture. He learned quickly. Took feedback without flinching. He started contributing ideas, small improvements to systems no one had dared to touch, and his suggestions worked. Still, he stayed invisible in the ways that mattered. No attempts to stand out. No direct conversations with me. He knew better. And I respected that. But respect isn't forgiveness. And recognition isn't permission. One Friday, the head of his team dropped by my office. She wanted to promote him, not far, just a small bump. Said he was ready for more. I nodded. Then said no. Not yet. I needed to see one more thing. That weekend, I called a meeting with HR, told them to draw up a new contract. Different title. Different terms. A challenge wrapped in opportunity. I wasn't interested in rewarding him. I was interested in testing whether what I'd seen these past few months was stability or penance. On Monday morning, I sent the offer myself. Subject line, let's talk. He showed up at my office at 8:30, silent and alert. Still that stiff navy shirt. Still those careful eyes, watching for signs, reading the space like a battlefield. I didn't ask him to sit. I'm offering you a new role, I said. It's not what you applied for. It's lower than your last job. Fewer benefits. Harder hours. No guarantee of advancement. His jaw tensed. Why? Because I want to see if you'll take it anyway. He hesitated. Not as a punishment, I added. As a choice. Your choice. He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then he said, I'll take it. Just like that. No negotiation. No hesitation. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Because I don't want anything I didn't earn, he said. Not anymore. I studied him. Tried to measure whether it was performance or honesty. But there was no pride in his tone. Just resolve. It surprised me more than I expected. You start next week, I said. Different team. Different lead. And no one will know who you were to me. He nodded once. Understood. I finally gestured to the chair. He sat. The tension eased slightly. This isn't redemption, I said. Don't mistake this for some storybook arc where the villain learns a lesson and walks away clean. I know who I was, Savannah, he said. And I know what I cost you. I stared at him. Not with hate. Not with resentment. Just clarity. Good, I said. Then don't forget it. I stood. He followed. At the door, I paused. Looked at him. I don't need you to fail to feel like I won, I said. But I won't carry your weight for you either. I don't expect you to, he replied. And then he was gone again. That week, the team adjusted. Quietly. He started over. No one questioned it. No one guessed. He was just another junior staffer now, grinding under the weight of expectations, navigating the same maze everyone else did. Only I knew what it meant for him to be there. Only I understood what it meant for me to let him. This wasn't reconciliation. It was reconstruction of a world where I was no longer defined by his shadow. And maybe, just maybe, where he could learn to live without casting one. Time passed. Months melted into routine, and slowly, Tyler became part of the background. Not in the way he used to make others disappear, but in the way you eventually stop noticing something once loud because it's no longer echoing in your mind. He showed up. Every day. Early. Focused. Precise. He didn't seek praise, didn't chase visibility. He fixed bugs no one else wanted to touch. He volunteered for the tasks that were tedious, technical, and thankless. His reports were clean. His logic was sharp. He still wasn't exceptional, not yet, but he was steady. And that mattered more. People liked him. Gradually. Quietly. He earned their trust not with charm, but with consistency. And I kept my distance. I watched from meetings, from sprint reviews, from hallway glances. I never spoke to him outside what was required. And he never crossed the line. Not once. The team didn't know. They never suspected. No one whispered in the break room or stared too long. To them, he was just Tyler, the quiet guy in DevOps who worked hard and didn't complain. I made sure of it. Because this story, our story, didn't belong to anyone else. Something inside me began to shift. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with a sudden epiphany or late-night revelation. It was subtle. Quiet. Like a weight slowly lifting after years of wearing it so long you forgot what life was like without it. The memory of that stage, that spotlight, that laugh, it dulled. Not because I forgot. But because it no longer defined me. I had built too much. Survived too much. Become too much. To be reduced to a single night. Still, some nights, I caught myself remembering. Not the pain. The girl. The one I used to be. The one who held her silence like a shield. Who believed she had to shrink to be loved. Who mistook cruelty for attention. And I looked at the woman I'd become and felt grief, not for what I'd lost, but for how long I carried it. Tyler never asked for more. Never hinted at anything outside of work. Whatever apology he owed me, he had already given it, not in words, but in the hours he spent rebuilding, one line of code at a time. He didn't ask for forgiveness. And I no longer needed to give it. Because I had found peace in the absence of rage. In the discipline of dignity. In the quiet power of moving forward without needing to burn what came before. One afternoon, I walked past his desk. He didn't notice. He was deep in something, debugging, maybe. Focused. Calm. I paused for a second. Just long enough to recognize the truth. He was no longer the villain in my story. He was just a person. Flawed. Trying. And I was free. Not because he changed. But because I no longer needed the past to stay broken for my future to make sense. 6 months later, I called him into the conference room. It was a gray Wednesday afternoon. The kind that draped the city in silence. My schedule was stacked, meetings bleeding into meetings. But I made time for this one. Not because I had to. Because I chose to. He arrived exactly at the hour. Not a minute early, not a second late. He wore the same quiet professionalism he'd wrapped himself in for months. No smile. No fear. Just readiness. I gestured to the chair across from me. He sat. Neither of us spoke right away. I opened a folder. Inside, a printed report, his progress review. I had read it 3 times already, but I needed to hold it when I said what I was about to say. You've done well, I said. He nodded, but didn't thank me. Good. You took the work seriously, I continued. You didn't shortcut it. You didn't ask for recognition. You showed up. Every day. Still, he didn't speak. I set the folder down. I'm not promoting you. His jaw shifted. Barely. But he didn't object. You're not ready for the next title yet, I said. But you're on track. And more importantly, you've earned the right to be here. This time, he spoke. Thank you, he said, voice low, grounded. That means more than you think. No, I said. I know exactly what it means. I stood. Walked to the window. The city outside stretched in every direction, old brick, new glass, towers rising where scars used to be. I turned back to him. I brought you here because I needed to prove something to myself, I said. That I could face what hurt me. That I could see it, see you, and not shatter. He stayed silent. I didn't expect you to be this, I admitted. Someone who took the fall and didn't run. Someone who chose to start at the bottom. Someone who stayed. I stayed, he said softly, because I wanted to change the story. I stepped closer. Not aggressively. Not emotionally. Just present. You don't get to rewrite it, I said. But you do get to live past it. He nodded once, eyes steady. I picked up the visitor badge from his first day. I had kept it in the drawer all this time. Faded, creased at the corner. I held it up. Do you remember this? He nodded again. I do. This, I said, isn't a symbol of who you were. I placed it on the table between us. It's proof that I built a future, with or without you in it. And you, now, are part of that future. Not because I forgot. Not because I forgave. But because I outgrew the need to keep you out. He looked down at the badge, then up at me. And for the first time, he didn't look guilty. He looked respectful. I'll never take that lightly, he said. I know. He stood. Reached for the door. Tyler, I said. He paused. No one else knows what happened, I said. And they don't need to. But I do. And now, I get to decide. What that means. He met my gaze one last time. Thank you, he said. Not as a plea. Not as redemption. Just a recognition. And then he walked out. I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse with release. I smiled. Because it was over. Not the job. Not the company. Not even the version of me I had grown into. But the shadow. The weight. The need to prove myself to someone who once tried to erase me. I had done it. Not for applause. Not for revenge. But because I could. Because I did. And no one would ever define me again.